Welcome everyone to our Replication Project on video modeling and self-evaluation for yoga poses. This is for SPCE 611, Section 802, and we are Group 3. Our group members include myself, Nicole Curtis, Rachel Edwards, Courtney Powers Brumfield, Stella Vasserman, and Savannah Yelkin. Thank you, and I hope that you guys enjoy our presentation. Hello everyone, my name is Nicole Curtis and I am from Indiana. I'm currently in my 4th semester at Ball State and I'm majoring in applied behavior analysis with an emphasis in autism. Currently, I'm a registered behavior technician and am working as a program manager apprentice in an ABA center in central Indiana. I have been in the field of ABA for coming up on 3 years now.
Hello, my name is Rachel Edwards. I'm from West Virginia. I'm a transfer student from Marshall University. I'm in my 7th semester at Ball State University. I'm majoring in ABA with an emphasis in autism. I'm also a registered behavior technician. However, I'm also a sign language interpreter. I also used to be a special education teacher and decided to jump into the ABA boat.
Hi, my name is Courtney Powers Brumfield. I'm from West Virginia. I'm a transfer student from Marshall University. This is my 2nd semester at Ball State. I'm majoring in special education with my ABA certification.
Hi, my name is Stella Vasserman. I was born in Russia. I grew up in Massachusetts. And I currently live in Denver, Colorado. I am in my 3rd semester at Ball State University. I am majoring in applied behavior analysis with an emphasis in autism. I'm a registered behavior technician, and I've been in the field for almost 3 years working in home, school, and center-based settings.
Hey everyone, my name is Savannah Yelkin. I currently live in the Atlanta, Georgia area. I have been working in autism for about 5 years now, but I've been an ABA therapist for about 2. I am currently enrolled in the Applied Behavior Analysis with an emphasis in autism program. I've been in the program for about a year now and I really like it. And I currently work as an ABA therapist at a local center.
Downs, Miltenberger, Petronsky, and Witherspoon 2015 conducted a study to determine the effectiveness of video self-evaluation to increase the accuracy of yoga poses. Yoga is an ancient practice dating back thousands of years that has increased in popularity in Western culture. Numerous health benefits have been identified, including an increase in muscle strength, endurance, and flexibility, and cardiorespiratory endurance. It is important to practice yoga poses accurately to prevent injury. Self-evaluation procedures are when the individual learns to evaluate their own performance, which can be valuable because it requires less time from the trainer or coach. Improvements viewed likely function as reinforcers for behavioral changes. The participants in this study were 2 adult males ages 21 and 24 who responded to a flyer for the study because they wanted to learn yoga poses. Participants had no previous experience doing yoga and were asked not to do yoga poses outside of these sessions. The research design used was a multiple baseline design across behaviors. The researchers created 3 separate task analyses for each yoga pose and had a certified yoga instructor review the steps to determine if the poses were depicted accurately. They also had 2 certified yoga instructors that were blind to the experimental conditions use a 5-point Likert scale to rate the quality of the poses in the videos presented at random to assess the social validity of the outcome of the intervention. Treatment integrity percentage was different for each participant, with one being 50% and the other being 38%. Participants had to be retrained on how to complete the task analysis for each pose. During baseline, the researcher acted as a model for participants for each of the poses and did not provide feedback on how the participants completed each pose. This would be similar to if you were going to take a yoga class. During the video self-evaluation intervention, participants viewed the videos of themselves completing the yoga poses and evaluated themselves using the specific task analysis for each pose. The first two sessions of this phase for each pose involved the researcher showing the participants how to use the task analysis to evaluate the pose. The researcher viewed the video with the participants, scored the behaviors with the participants via the task analysis datasheet, and discussed the scoring of correct or incorrect steps observed. Each subsequent session in their phase consisted of the participants scoring each video without assistance or feedback. The video feedback phase was implemented if the participant's pose showed only a minor level of improvement throughout the video self-evaluation phase. During the video feedback phase, the participant practiced a pose and then watched the practice video as the researcher provided feedback on each step in the task analysis. The participant practiced the pose again and immediately watched the video as the researcher provided feedback. Maintenance was conducted for one participant post-weeks intervention and the second participant 2 weeks post-intervention. The results showed that the utilization of the video self-evaluation increased the accuracy of yoga poses in both participants, regardless of the fact that they needed to be retrained on how to complete the task analysis.
The first study we referenced in our project is that of Boyer, Miltenberger, Batch, and Fogel that was conducted in 2009. This study involved 4 female participants ranging in age from 7 to 10. The study was conducted in the gymnastics studio in which the participants were members of. They practiced for 3 hours 3 times a week, with 30 minutes of that time being set aside for the intervention. The researchers enabled the help of experts to model 3 skills on the uneven bars for participants and were recorded completing the skills. For data collection purposes, they used a 28-item checklist in which they would calculate as a percent per trial. During the intervention phase, the first attempt at completing each skill by the participant was recorded. After the skill was completed, the participant would watch the skill being completed by the expert and themselves side by side and frame by frame to see which areas matched up and which areas didn't. After watching, the participants would then complete each of the 3 skills 2 more times without receiving any feedback. The results showed that each participant was able to increase the rate in which they acquired each of these skills, as well as maintaining them after the intervention had ended. The next study that you will see was conducted in 2011 by Michael Hewitt and looked at the impact of self-evaluation on student self-evaluation, music performance, and self-evaluation accuracy. The students that took part in the study were part of a private middle school, grades 5 to 8. The intervention consisted of 3 options: self-evaluation instruction, self-evaluation only, or no self-evaluation. Each student created a rubric to evaluate their own performance. The intervention phase lasted 8 weeks, and the results found that self-evaluation had very little impact on each student's performance. Next, we have a study by Senato, Goldstein, and Strain in 1992, which looked at the effects of self-evaluation on preschool children's use of social interactions with their classmates with autism. The study included 6 typically developing children and 6 diagnosed with autism. The participants were taught 4 different strategies to engage and play with their peers. Baseline phase included the participants being given a few ideas for play. Intervention phase included self-evaluation, in which the participants utilized their self-evaluation booklets to help them choose the proper interaction to engage and play. Results showed that self-evaluation was helpful in increasing the skills of facilitating play with individuals on the spectrum. The 4th reference listed is that of Joshua Smith in 2004, which was conducted on the effects of video modeling on acquiring the skill of a golf swing. The participants included 108 students who were taped in the beginning to determine skill level. They were all assigned to either Group 1, the control, Group 2, the single view, or Group 3, multi-view. The first group watched the skill being demonstrated 40 times. The second group viewed the skill from a front view only, and the third group were able to see the skill from all angles. Each participant was rated on 7 competencies. The study found that participants in the single view and multi-view groups were able to acquire the skill at a faster rate than that of the control group. Lastly, we looked at the study conducted by Yu and Lee from 2010. Their study focused on the effects of video self-evaluation on communication skills, competence, and learning motivation of nursing students who were performing a Foley catheterization. The nursing students were split into 2 groups, one being an experimental group and the other the control group. For the purpose of data collection, a 3-point Likert scale was used, which consisted of 21 items. The pretest that the experimental group completed was recorded, and they were sent a video after to review their performance before taking the post-test. The control group were recorded but only sent written feedback. Results showed that the utilization of video modeling and self-evaluation was effective for increasing skill competency as well as communication skills and motivation to learn. Overall, the majority of these studies we looked at found similar results to the study that we chose to replicate when looking at video modeling and self-evaluation. 2 of the studies, being that of Hewitt and Smith, both found video modeling and self-evaluation to not be as effective in increasing each respective skill being observed. In regards to our replication project, our results are more closely related to the concept of video modeling and self-evaluation being successful in increasing the skill it is targeting.
Hey, the purpose of this study was to replicate the effects of video self-evaluation on skill acquisition with yoga postures. It was originally conducted by Holly Downs, Raymond Miltenberger, Jessica Biedoronsky, and Lisa Witherspoon. The purpose was to increase the accuracy of yoga poses through self-evaluation. It's important to learn how to do yoga poses accurately to prevent self-injury and to maximize the benefits of yoga. The participants and settings consisted of 5 graduate students from Ball State University, ranging in age from 23 to 38. The participants had little to no prior yoga experience. The participants had no injuries or physical limitations that would interfere with the success of the study. The participants did not practice any additional yoga outside of the study sessions, and each participant conducted their sessions inside of their private homes. The materials needed for this project replication included a video feature on a smartphone for recording purposes, a yoga mat, laptop or desktop, and videos of downward dog, tree pose, and warrior 2 yoga poses.
In order to make sure that our performance was measured accurately, we needed to create clear operational definitions for each pose. We utilized 3 different poses, the exact same poses used by the original study: tree pose, downward dog, and warrior 2. These 3 poses, although very different from one another, are all very common poses within yoga. In order to collect data, we utilized task analysis, the exact same technique used in the original study. However, we were not able to get a hold of the original task analysis, which is later discussed in our limitations. So we created our own. We separated each step for each pose. Data was collected by using a task analysis for all 3 poses. Also, each pose had to be held for at least 30 seconds. Percentage was calculated by dividing the number of steps completed correctly by the total number of steps in each pose. So if you got 3 out of 10 steps correctly, that would be a 30% accuracy. Here we have the first task analysis, the tree pose. As you can see, there are sections for the date, the performer, and the observer. This is because we implemented IOA data, so we need both observers on there. There are 5 steps. As you can see, there's either pass or fail, plus or minus for each step. And at the very bottom, there's an area for totals and then accuracy. And if you remember, you take that total correct and then divide it by the total amount of steps. So if you got a 1 out of 5 steps, that would be a 20% accuracy down at the bottom. Here we have the second task analysis, the downward dog. This one has 11 steps, and as you can see, it is a lot different than the first pose. So this would be calculated a little bit differently, as in the total would be by out of 11. Here we are at the very last task analysis, the Warrior 2. As you can see, it's a standing pose. There are 12 steps, the most of any pose. And due to these large amount of steps, we really agreed that task analysis would be the best way to measure the accuracy of our performance. The research design we implemented was the multiple baseline design across behaviors. This is the exact same design used within the original study. As we can see, the participants do not change, ourselves. The setting does not change, our homes. The only change we see is the behavior. And this is due to the fact that we are implementing 3 different behaviors, or 3 poses. The tree pose, the downward dog, and the warrior 2. So we are implementing baseline amongst all 3 behaviors. Here we have our baseline condition, or without treatment video self-evaluation. During the baseline condition, each participant watched the 3 videos of yoga poses. We found these videos on YouTube, 1 video per pose, and these were how-to videos. We watched the video and then attempted to implement the pose ourselves. We did record ourselves, but not for video self-evaluation, for IOA data. Each pose was performed at a minimum of 3 times per session. Our accuracy for the session for each pose was calculated by taking the 3 attempts and then finding the average accuracy of those 3 attempts. Sessions lasted about 10 minutes long, and in order to get that IOA data, we did videotape ourselves during the baseline condition and send it to our fellow participants. Our fellow participants used those task analysis to determine our accuracy for us. Within the intervention condition, we implemented the treatment video self-evaluation. Although this is a large difference between the phases, we did find some similarities. For example, both the baseline and intervention phases began the same way, with the participants watching the how-to videos for each yoga pose and then attempting to perform them themselves while videotaping. Each pose was also attempted 3 times per session within both baseline and intervention condition. However, the big difference between the phases is that during the intervention condition, we watched our own videos and completed our own task analysis, rather than during the baseline condition when our fellow participants graded us. So when we were able to grade ourselves, we were able to see our mistakes and we were able to see where we could improve.
So when our group originally discussed how we were going to collect IOA data, we wanted to follow the original study as well as we could. We wanted to make sure this was a true replication and that we were doing everything as similar to them as we could. So what they did is they were able to gather blind observers who were unaware of any of the conditions or contingencies of the study to take data on the task analysis in order to evaluate how reliable the measurement tool was. So we wanted to do this. We did run into the issue that we weren't allowed to use outside people, but fortunately we were able to get permission from our professor to recruit people from our class and section. So we were able to recruit blind observers from 611 section 802 in order to collect data on our videos using the task analysis. We were able to get independent observers to collect data on 33% of the sessions. So since we each had 21 sessions containing 3 videos each, we were able to get people to take data on 7 of the sessions for each of us. We used trial by trial IOA, which was the number of trials in agreement divided by the total number of trials times 100. And fortunately for us, our IOA did remain at or above 80% throughout the replication. So since for this study we each took data on our own yoga poses, there was a very strong need for treatment integrity data. To collect this data, we each were assigned a different group member to evaluate our videos. We sent them to each other via YouTube, and we were able to evaluate each other's videos using the task analysis. We did want to make sure that we were doing everything accurately and that we were answering truthfully to our data. It would have been very tempting to lie on our data to make sure that it looks like we're great at yoga. We all agreed that we needed to keep treatment integrity 80% or higher, so the data had to match up 80% or higher. If it ever fell below for any reason, for any group member, we were all going to meet as a group through Google Hangouts to review the task analysis and make sure that we all agreed on the data collection and that we were well trained on it. Fortunately for us, treatment integrity did remain at or above 80% throughout the entire application and across all group members. So fortunately for us, we never had to get the additional training.
Okay, so we will first take a look at my graphs that were completed for this replication project. When looking at my graphs, you can see that during the baseline phase for each of the 3 poses, the data is fairly stable with no prominent increasing or decreasing trends. Moving on to the intervention phase, there is a clear increasing trend in the beginning, with each leveling off and becoming stable at 100% in the last few days of the intervention phase. Looking at the baseline averages, I was around 63% for the tree pose, 57% for downward dog, and 67% for warrior 2. Intervention averages increased to around 81% for the tree pose, 83% for downward dog, and 87% for warrior 2. Baseline ranges for tree were 60 to 70, downward dog was 52 to 64, and warrior 2 was 58 to 72. Intervention ranges for tree pose were 60 to 100, downward dog was 58 to 100, and warrior 2 was 70 to 100. Overall, my graphs show that this intervention was effective in increasing my ability to complete each of the 3 poses.
So let's take a look at the data that I was able to collect in regards to my performance within these yoga poses. As you can see, if you take a look at my table, I separated my data amongst the 3 yoga poses: tree pose, downward dog, warrior 2. I also separated my data between baseline and treatment so we can see if the treatment was effective. So if we look at the bottom table, we can see that I have averages and ranges for baseline and treatment amongst all 3 poses as well. If we look at those averages, we can see that the treatment was effective. My accuracy within the treatment is much higher than my accuracy within baseline. If we look at the graph, we can see that my accuracy improved immediately when implementing the treatment and continued to increase. All 3 poses increased with the treatment of video self-evaluation.
As you can see here with my graphs, when I was in baseline, my percent of accuracy, it was steady, but it was very low. For my tree pose, I was ranging from 25% to 35% with a baseline average about 30%. Now down on downward dog, my baseline range went from 25% to 45%, and I was getting an average of about 36%. Warrior 2, I was a little higher. My baseline range was 35% to 45%, and I was averaging about 37.5. Now, after we implemented our intervention, as you can see, I had a steady increase in trend. With my tree pose, my intervention range went from 50 to 100%, and I was averaging around 80% accuracy. Now with downward dog, my intervention range went from 55% to 100% with an intervention average around 84%. And then with warrior 2, my intervention range was 65% to 100% and my intervention average was around 83.5.
For my tree pose, my baseline range was between 20 and 40% with an average of 24%. I had a spike during session 2, but my baseline was stable for sessions 3, 4, and 5. I was able to implement intervention. For intervention, my range was between 80 and 100% with an average of 95. My first couple sessions of intervention were unsteady, but my data got stable towards the end of intervention with 100% accuracy. For my downward dog, my baseline range was between 9 and 27% with an average of 19%. For the first couple sessions, there's a decreasing trend, and then it started to increase and managed to stable out. And then intervention was implemented, and my range was between 82 and 100% with an average of 96.8%. For the first couple sessions of intervention, my data was increasing, and then it got stable at 100% accuracy. For warrior pose, my baseline was between 8 and 17% with an average of 13.7%. The data was pretty stable throughout baseline. Then intervention was implemented. My range was between 67 and 100% with an average of 89.2. For the first sessions of intervention, my data is increasing, and then for the last 3 sessions of intervention, my baseline was stable at 100% accuracy.
Before I started this study, I did not have a very strong yoga background. The most I would do is very similar to what we did in the baseline phase. I would find videos on YouTube and just try to replicate what they were doing. As you can see from my data, that wasn't very sufficient for me because my accuracy is still fairly low in the baseline phase. You can see my baseline is pretty low, somewhat stable, and around the same level. So you can see the lowest accuracy I got was 27% in the downward dog position, and it ranged as high as 60% in the tree pose. All of my averages fell below 50%, which is not very good, so you can see that the intervention was pretty necessary to me if I did want to improve my yoga accuracy. As you can see, as soon as we implemented the intervention, you can see it increase. For me personally, it was more of a gradual increase, but I was able to eventually reach 100% accuracy in the yoga poses. You can see that the lowest intervention average is 86% and the highest is 92%. I think I could conclude that this intervention was pretty successful for me in improving my yoga accuracy.
Our conclusions. All the participants' graphs show that video self-evaluation was effective in increasing the accuracy of 3 separate yoga poses. Participants with high and low baseline data showed an increase in accuracy when intervention was implemented. Some participants showed high and steady intervention data, and others showed an increasing trend in their intervention. Our results support the results of the original study. Video self-evaluation can be an effective intervention to improve yoga postures. Video self-evaluation allows for immediate feedback with minimal disruptions. Video self-evaluation is a possible alternative to traditional video feedback that involves another individual. Video self-evaluation is cost-effective because the immediate feedback does not involve another individual. There were several limitations to the study. There was no motivation. Unlike the participants in the original study, we were not interested in learning about yoga poses or increasing our exercise. There was no reinforcement. We had to create our own task analysis for each of the yoga positions due to the fact that we were unable to get access to the task analyses that were used in the original study. They were not provided in the literature, and when we emailed the researchers, they did not get back to us. We were not able to get a certified yoga instructor to go over our task analysis to check for social validity like was done in the original study. Participants could have marked a step correctly, even if it wasn't correct on their evaluation of the task analysis. They could have done this to make their data look better. Participants knew that other participants would be seeing our videos, so they may have tried harder. If participants knew that we were doing an IOA session, they could have tried harder on their yoga poses. And the video also acted as a model prompt, which could be a confounding variable.
Here you can see our collective references that support video self-evaluation. Thank you for watching our presentation.